I am here with Mr. Bob Gilpatrick. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Hey, Raleigh. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Glad to be back. We took a week or two off, vacation time, for me anyway. Bob was hard at work, though, as usual. Never takes a break. But we're glad to be back. Tuesday, 11 a.m. We are here, ready to roll.
Yeah.
Good.
Taking a break in a couple of weeks.
Yes, Bob's actually going to be going to Costa Rica, and he's going to be doing some good work down there with some health physicians. It's going to be very good, very good. But anyway, what we're talking about today is that not all carbs are bad, right? A lot of people hear the word carb and they run for the hills, right? It's like a 4-letter word.
They think of gaining weight.
Yes, the first thing they do is think of gaining weight, and that's not their fault because we are told many, many times. We've even said, be aware of carbs, right? They turn into things that you don't necessarily want, right? Too much extra sugars, things that don't get utilized and cause insulin resistance and things like that, right? But they're not all bad, right? With the ones they're talking about and we talk about often are processed carbs, the carbs that are hard to break down, sugary things like candies and things like that, white bread, highly refined carbohydrates. Yeah. Those are the ones you want to avoid. However, today we are talking about a very good one that I think more people should probably add into their diet is called resistant starch, right? Resistant starch is something that it doesn't sound very sexy. Let's put it that way. Resistant starch doesn't sound like something that you would maybe necessarily know even where it comes from. So that's why we wanted to talk about it today. There's a lot of information that shows that this unique carbohydrate can actually be key in reducing weight as well as helping to support gut health. So that's why it's important to us, and we wanted to talk about it, Bob, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So starch can be broken down into categories. One is where it's quickly and easily digestible, which means it can be broken down into smaller components, which is a beneficial thing in some regards, as long as you don't have too much of it, because it does create glucose in the end result, which can be used for fuel.
Right.
But that's where you have to be careful, because too much glucose is going to create insulin resistance,
right,
and is going to make it so that your cells can't properly absorb glucose to use for energy, and then it gets converted to fat. And in the process, it also glycates proteins and creates excessive inflammation.
Lots of inflammation.
So that easily digested starch, carbohydrates, is good to a certain degree. And then you have another level where it's kind of in the middle of the road, where it's digestible, but it takes longer to digest.
Gotcha.
And then you have the undigestible.
Right, or resistant.
Because it resists digestion.
There you go,
right?
In stereo.
And so it makes it through the stomach, makes it through the small intestine, and lands in the large intestine undigested, which in this case is a good thing.
Right.
Number one, it didn't add to your load of glucose. Right. And secondly, it helps with elimination. And then it's available for an interaction with the good bacteria in your gut.
Also, I don't think
some people call it prebiotics for that reason.
Correct. And I also don't think you get there's not a lot of calories associated with it.
Right.
Because it's not being digested.
Right.
And therefore, what it is a dietary fiber. That's what you hear the phrase dietary fiber. You should have more fiber in your diet. You go to the doctors, they say, oh, you need to have some more fiber in your diet. This is what they're talking about, dietary fiber, the stuff that makes it through down to the bottom of the barrel, right? And why is it important that it gets there? Because all of your metabolites and things, probiotics and gut bacteria, they live down there.
Yep.
And what this provides them is actual food so they can survive, right? Because from what me and you've talked about, certain bacteria, good and bad, need food. And the more candida type bacteria live off those sugars and those things. And that's the bad bacteria. That causes that to fester. But the good bacteria live off more of like the dietary fiber, the resistant starches, and that will make them strong to balance out that gut flora, from what I understand.
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So the resistant starch actually helps the good bacteria to expand, to grow more,
Okay.
which the
Proliferate.
more the better. And but in addition, it interacts with those bacteria in a fermentation that creates metabolites as an offshoot. So a metabolite is something created from an interaction. And a metabolite is a useful thing that gets involved in metabolic pathways, and it contributes like an enzyme contributes, and then you end up with the next metabolic process and the next and the next.
Mm-hmm.
So butyrate, for example, a short chain fatty acid that's created that way from bacteria fermenting fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very important for protecting the lining of the gut and also boosting your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many different critical functions of the human body for staying alive, like immunity, that are positively affected by this fermentation and creation of metabolites.
Right. And one of the things that we were talking about, and when I was looking at, is we've went over why it's unique. It's unique because it doesn't really get digested, and it provides those health benefits. But it actually seems like one of the things that it can do is not only feed, but when you have the critters, right, that are in your digestive tract that nibble on the resistant starch, those short chain fatty acids, the butyrate, that's where those things are created, right? And if you don't have that, or I'm thinking of the people that we know that don't have a colon, they don't have
We
the
had
ability to do this.
2 weeks ago, during the same week, we
Mm-hmm.
had two different people that called that had that issue. And in which case, what happens is people get a procedure called an ileostomy. And what it does is an ileostomy is when they have to remove the colon. So they take the very tail end of the small intestine, and they have to have an outlet for it. So they make an incision in your side, and they pull the end of the small intestine through, and then they stitch it to your skin. Right? And that's this ostomy. It's this stitching and
like
the
a
creation
colostomy.
of this exit opportunity. And then they have an ostomy bag, a small bag, that also affixes to your side. And and then the content of your small intestine drains into that bag. Now, normally, the content of your small intestine, which would include resistant starch, goes through a valve and enters your large intestine. And then it slowly processes its way through and removes water. So it helps with hydration. And that's where the interaction begins for the creation of these metabolites, including butyrate, tryptophan, etc. So when people have their colon removed, all of that good liquid that has been processed and nutrients extracted to put it through to the next phase of human metabolism is not available. So it's going in the trash. It's going in the garbage. So people have trouble staying hydrated that don't have a colon, because a big part of hydration is the absorption of water in the large intestine. Because it arrives as a liquid, and then it becomes a solid as it gets dehydrated
through the
And
intestine.
so we have people that call us saying, "Hey, I have an ileostomy. Do you have anything that will help me?"
Right.
And the answer is yes, we absolutely do, because we have a scientist that works with us up in Canada who created a special type of probiotic with metabolites.
Already created, basically.
Right. And so what he did is he created almost like an artificial colon.
Okay, that's a good way to think of it.
He made a vat.
Right.
Okay. And he puts resistant starch in the form of our sprouted barley seed powder that people will take directly. But he put that powder into this vat. He added a special mineral water to it and good bacteria.
Right.
And he also added some yeast because bacteria is not the only pathogen that is in your gut. There's yeast also.
Right.
So he then allowed it to ferment just as it would in the gut.
Right.
And he would stir it because it was like a sludge that he
Right.
had made. He would stir it. And after 90 days, there's the metabolites have been created. The starch
Right.
has been interacted with the bacteria, created all those metabolites that would normally be created in your large intestine. And now you need the dehydration effect because there's lots of water. And so you're not going to be drinking this sludge.
No,
right?
You got to get it into.
You need it in a powder form that you can add water to, where it won't be disgusting.
Right.
So there's a little generator in the bottom of the vat that's a platter with ridges on it. And when you turn it on, it spins.
Ooh, cyclonic.
It creates a tornado. Cyclonic generator. So it spins, and that spinning, that tornado, creates dehydration. So it pulls the water out. And it also, as an offshoot of a tornado, it creates like an electron storm.
Right.
That stabilizes the nutrients from oxidation. So now you have this done for you metabolites.
Yeah.
And that's what we can tell a person who has an ileostomy and a ileostomy bag. Okay. Yes, we can help you. You can have metabolites again, including butyrate, tryptophan, etc. Hundreds of different ones. When you take the premium probiotic with metabolites, because it's a done for you product.
Yeah. And, one of the things a lot of people talk about is, what's the colony count? How many, what's the...
how many colony-forming units?
How many colony-forming units are there? And we definitely have colony-forming units in here, but a lot of people don't realize that those are being used to create the metabolites in the gut, right? And so what you're not getting metabolites with normal probiotics, you're getting probiotics.
Lots of more probiotics.
Right.
In hopes that it will encounter the right amount of resistant starch in your large intestine, which in many cases is not the case because people are not taking a prebiotic.
No.
They're taking just this probiotic, and it doesn't have an opportunity to create the metabolites. And so in a way, it's better to have less colony-forming units, more metabolites that are already done for you.
Gotcha.
So the person who's trying to be healthy doesn't also have to constantly be worried about, am I getting enough resistant starch?
Right. And because a lot of and we're going to get into this, how do you get the resistant starch? We've got some really good ways to add it to your diet naturally that we'll go over in just a second, but they're not easy ways to get it in your diet. And the things that we come into contact with in our American diet are usually those highly processed ones, starches, fibers, carbohydrates that have the sugar in it that don't equal it out, right? And so with the premium probiotics, one of the cool things that we took the time to do is not only are there the metabolites in there, but there's resistant starch in here. There's prebiotics already in here as well. Yep. So the live colony forming units that you're still getting have a really good chance of actually turning into more metabolites on top of what's already been created
for people with a colon.
Right, by our scientists in Canada, in that vat. So, and that's right where I was getting. So people that have a colon, they'll get more from it. People that don't have a colon can still get what they need. And I've actually told this to somebody because they said, I was telling them about other probiotics. Well, I don't have a colon. I can't use that. And then I explained to them this, and they were like, well, let me try it. And it's talking to them later on, they called back and said, that was very, very helpful. Never been able to take a probiotic before that even really does anything. Yeah. And that's because the done for you metabolites, which is really crazy when you think about it. There's no other probiotics that I know that have that.
No, not that I'm aware of either.
Me either.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you can purchase individual or small groups of
Mhm.
metabolites like butyrate,
right,
but not something comprehensive that's all natural, organic,
and created naturally.
vegan, and
Right.
all like that.
It mimics the process of the body.
Yeah.
And so because the way that it's created mimics that, it'll assimilate a lot easier, especially with someone who doesn't have a colon, especially with someone who does have a colon. It's even easier.
Yeah.
You know?
People that have a colon, it's highly beneficial, and it makes it so you don't have to be so diligent about your resistant starch.
And, it really helps with gas and bloating.
Yeah.
Because it's eating all that stuff up and turning it into usable stuff.
We've heard all different types of benefits from people. It's also anti-inflammatory.
That's very true.
So, and butyrate is anti-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting butyrate in this powder.
Right, and it's great for diabetics too. Resistant starch in general is shown to help improve insulin sensitivity. And it lowers post-meal blood sugar numbers by slowing down the digestion, right? Because you're not processing those sugary carbs, right? You're having to slow down the process for all these resistant starches because they're resistant to the process, so it takes longer, which is good because compared to eating fast digesting or refined sugary carbs, it lessens the amount of sugar, therefore the inflammation, right?
Yeah.
Lessens your chances of diabetes, especially if you're pre-diabetic. Right. And it allows you to slow your digestion, making you feel fuller.
Yeah.
Right. So it can help with weight release that way. Right. That leptin that's created is created during that process and makes you feel fuller for longer.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So before we go, let's tell people a little bit about if they're going to try to get resistant starch. We recommend you do both.
Exactly.
Get resistant starch. Use the probiotics that we have that already have the metabolites, right? It's much more readily available. Here's the other thing, Raleigh. When you use our product, those metabolites are absorbed in your small intestine very soon after you take them in, as opposed to going all the way down to your large intestine. Now you're waiting for the fermentation process, the creation of the metabolites. Right. This way you're getting these metabolites much sooner after you've eaten.
You get the benefits faster.
Right. Yeah. And so, but one of the ways that people can get resistant starch, if you need to, and again, as you were saying, it's a little bit of work. So one of the things that people can do is boil potatoes, then cool them down, put them in the refrigerator overnight. During that cooling process, the starch that was in the potatoes becomes resistant. And then you can reheat those potatoes if you want. But that's a really good way of getting resistant starch.
Best thing to do, man, make some potato salad.
Yeah.
Potato salad is great, and it has abundant amounts of resistant starch. Don't put too much mayonnaise and stuff in there. You know, make it tasty. Don't use too much of the fatty stuff. But I'm telling you, that's the best. You know how they always say potato salad's better the next day after it sits for 24 hours?
Yeah.
It's true. And it's the best way to get your resistant starch.
Exactly. You could also do this with beans like black beans, chickpeas, pinto beans. Once they're cooked, the starch becomes resistant also. Right? But again, a lot of people don't eat that type of food.
Right.
And they also don't eat brown rice.
Right.
Brown rice you can use when you cook it. The same thing happens, but as you can see, it's not all that easy to get resistant starch. I like taking the probiotics and not worrying about it so much to try to feed the good bacteria with that.
Right. And as we were looking through these natural sources, right, of course we came across barley.
Yeah.
You know, and barley that's our specialty right here. This is our specialty. So last but not least, if you're taking some of our barley, you're getting a good amount of this, the dietary fiber / resistant starches, you know. And one of the things that I've noticed when I take the probiotics and the barley together is the digestion. I had issues with my I had diverticulitis. You know that. I told you that. I haven't had any real issues since the one flare-up I had. And one of the things that I always make sure to take is the digestive enzymes and the probiotics, and even if it's just a little bit of barley, because it really helps with the cleansing of the gut. The barley does, so it helps absorption, right? So it'll help you absorb more of the metabolites as you take them in through your small intestine.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
And then whatever's left over that doesn't get digested is going down to the large to the colon and helping make more metabolites. And so you've got the CFUs, the colony forming units that are still in here, on top of the resistant starches that are in the barley and in the probiotics. My gut's happy, baby. My brain-gut connection's firing on all cylinders, and it really does help with clear thinking, because your neurotransmitters are made in the gut. They got to be made in a good environment. And the metabolites are key in that process. So anyway, there's your recipe.
There you go.
But that's about it,
Excellent.
man.
Yeah, I think that's good overview for today. And, people want more information, they certainly can call us.
Yeah, and I put the QR code up right on the screen. Visit our website. Check out the probiotics if you want more information. We've got tons of blogs on them. This will be up live on our YouTube and Facebook if you want to rewatch it and hear about it. I'm also going to be making a blog with all the information on it. And then our barley, we've got Heirloom and Gladiator. This has a little less protein, 10 grams of pre-digested protein. This has 20 grams in it, and they both have resistant starch.
Absolutely.
It's a great source.
Great. Thanks, Raleigh.
Absolutely.
Today.
Always.
Thanks for everything.
Have fun, you guys.
On the next show. Thanks for watching. Listen to Live Forever Radio Young live.
Hey, I love that.
Can you say that over again?
Live Forever Young Radio live.
There you go.
Hey, I loved it, man. Be good, you guys. Oh, that was good.
That's good. I'm gonna start a new file on resistant starch. So
yeah, I'm actually
need it.
I know that. There we go. I know that Stephanie, why couldn't I think of her name? Stephanie was going to be using some of this for possibly the newsletter, so that's what I was like, it'd be good. It's very consistent. But yeah, I like this. I'm going to turn this. I actually wrote this out like this because I'm going to take it and just turn it into a blog. So we'll have both versions. We'll have the blog. We'll have this. But yeah, everything's good.
Good. I'll have